Chapter 14. The Weight of Smoke. The scent of blood and smoke followed the hunting party like a shadow. Richard dismounted slowly, feeling the weight of the morning's victory drag behind him like a chain. Around him, the square came alive, villagers cheering, children shouting, the hammer of hooves and bootsteps echoing as people rushed in from the fields and homes. The dragon's body was laid out in the center, a red-scaled giant, lifeless and still smoking from the bolts that had pierced its throat and chest. A dozen men had worked to bring it down. They stood now like heroes beside their kill. But Richard didn't feel like a hero. The moment his boots hit the ground, he looked for her and saw everything unravel. She stood near the edge of the crowd, her red hair stark as flame against the backdrop of gray linen and brown cloaks. At first, she looked simply confused, as though the world around her no longer made sense. Then she saw the dragon. Something in her snapped. Her face contorted, not with fear, but with pain, deep and soul-wrenching. She took a single step back, her hands trembling. "Rose," Richard tried to say, but his voice barely escaped his throat. She turned and ran. No one else noticed, too swept up in the chaos of celebration, but he did. He watched her disappear between buildings, her dress flying like a banner of grief behind her, and he didn't move fast enough. By the time he gave chase, she was gone. "Did she see the dragon?" Marie asked quietly, appearing at his side. Richard's throat worked uselessly. She ran. "Poor thing," Marie said, glancing toward the slain beast. "Maybe it was too much. It's not a pretty sight." She looked like she was in pain. He shook his head, like it meant something. Marie gave him a sidelong glance. "Maybe it did." He didn't answer. Instead, he pushed away from the crowd and walked toward the woods. His body moved of its own accord, past the outer houses, the foot-worn dirt road, and into the tree line where the path split in a dozen directions. He didn't know which one she'd taken. "Rose," he called. Nothing. No birdsong, no breeze. Just the smell of pine and the distant echoes of music from the square. Drums, laughter, a crackle of torches. He didn't know how long he searched. But every path he followed was empty. No footprints, no signs. As though the forest had swallowed her whole. When he returned to the village, the celebration was in full swing. The dragon had been butchered. Fires burned with thick meat turning over open flame. Ale flowed. Music rolled down the streets like thunder. People were happy, and Richard had never felt more alone. He stood on the edge of the square and looked at the bones already being carried away for tools and charms, the red-scaled hide being stretched out for tanning. He thought of Rose's eyes, wide and wild, and then he thought of her hands, her touch, her voice, her curiosity, her compassion. He remembered the way she had stroked the neck of one of his goats, whispering nonsense to calm it, the way she'd helped Marie cook supper without being asked. The way she'd listened, really listened, when he told her about the land, about the way onions needed space to breathe, or how pears should never be overwatered. And now, had he been wrong about her? Or had she been more than she let on? A memory surfaced, faint but sharp. The gash on her forehead when he found her, her torn dress, the strange coppery sheen on her back when the sun hit it just right. He hadn't thought it meant anything. Now he wasn't so sure. That night, while the others drank and danced, Richard sat outside his house, watching the woods. He still held the scrap of cloth she'd left behind, caught on a bush as she ran, red. He didn't sleep, because in his heart something had shifted. The hunt that had always been tradition, that had brought pride and meat and stories, suddenly felt like murder. And the girl he'd come to care for, maybe even love, was gone, but not forever. He would find her. He had to understand. Even if the answer shattered everything he believed,